Okay, girls, in order to get started on our new graphic novel, Persepolis, I'm going to give you a little bit of background information about Iran, the Iranian Revolution, as well as women in Islam. So let's take a look at Persepolis, what you need to know. So as you can see here, Iran, this is a map of the Middle East, is located between Iraq and Afghanistan, and it's bordered by Saudi Arabia to the southwest. And it's roughly the size of the northeastern United States. So you see that it actually comes from Duluth, Minnesota, all the way over to Washington, D.C. So this is roughly the size of the country. You can see an area comparison of the size of Iran compared to the United States. Important cities and regions. So the capital of Iran is Tehran, and that's located in the north of the city. You see here that there are various regions throughout Iran, as well as cities to the south that you might recognize from the news. If you ever read any articles or see anything about Iran, you might recognize some of these cities. So anyway, you can see down here that the half moon recognizes Shia, and the vacant moon recognizes Sunni areas of the country, which we're about to talk about in a few minutes. So the major industries in Iran. So as you can see here, Iran industry really focuses on a couple of main industries. Oil is a huge industry in Iran. Iran is one of the major producers of world oil supply. There's also a variety of gas fields, coal fields, and right here you can see the different oil pipelines. And sometimes when we talk about conflict zones and we talk about warring tribes or groups of people who are interested in taking over different cities or who are conflicting over different cities, we really look at what are the different industries that they might be trying to take control over. So Persepolis originally was the old Iranian name of the capital. Persepolis looked like this. I really like looking at the ancient ruins. I think they're really beautiful, and you can see a lot about how far we've come from then and now. So Persepolis was the capital of Iran at the height of its empire. So when Iran was the Persian Empire, it was symbolic of the power and prestige Iran once held. So that could be a connection to why Marjane Satrapi has called her graphic novel Persepolis. The development of Iran is very interesting because Iran is over here. Okay, so we see the Middle East, and we see that instead of, like, so the migration patterns, I guess I should say, the background is Indo-European. So the peoples who also went on to settle Europe and also went on to settle Greece and migrated towards the west, towards Western Europe, also settled Iran. So Iranian people have some of the same facial and characteristics, kind of physical attributes that we see in Europe, which is very interesting. And so the rest of the Indo-Europeans also went down to migrate into Persia and later on into India. Kind of the background of where the Iranians came from. Key terms. So some terms you might hear in the novel and ones that I think are interesting for you. A coup d'etat is a sudden overthrow of the government. And you might have heard of these in your history classes before. The Shah was the title of the king of Iran. The Ayatollah was a high-ranking Shiite religious leader. Parliament is a government group that makes the laws in Iran. An absolute monarchy is a government where the king or the queen is the ultimate leader. And a constitutional monarchy is a government where the king and queen works with another governmental body, kind of like we see in England with the king or the queen, in our case, Queen Elizabeth, also works with Parliament to create rules and laws for the nation. A prime minister is the leader of an elected government, and when we hear to the West, we refer to the US and countries in Western Europe. The Middle East refers to countries in Southwestern Asia and Northern Africa. Nationalism is pride in one's country, and republic and democracy is a country where people hold the power to elect a leader. A theocracy, as you might notice from the root word theo, like theology, is a government run by religious leaders. A martyr is a person who is killed because of their religious beliefs, or someone who kills themselves because of their religious beliefs. An exile is to be kicked out of one's home country. Capitalism is a system in which businesses are owned by private owners who want to make a profit. And nationalization is the conversion of private company into one run by the government. Key aspects of Iranian culture. So the language is referred to as Persian. So you see here a combination of Persian and Arabic. So you can see how they're very similar. The characters look quite a bit alike, but they're also different. The religion, the main religion in Iran is Islam. There are two sects of Islam that are referred to. Shiite Islam culture mostly live in Iran and Iraq. They are more conservative, and they believe the leader of Islam should come from the bloodline of the Prophet Muhammad. The Sunnis, which form the majority of Muslims, are more liberal. They believe the leader of Islam does not need to share a bloodline with the Prophet Muhammad. So it's very complicated, and we could spend a lot of time going into the background of the different forms of Islam, but for our purposes in studying Persepolis, we just need to have a basic idea that Marjane Satrapi is referring to Islam throughout the novel. The key players in the Iranian Revolution. So we have Reza Shah, who was Shah of Iran from 1925 to 1941. And here's a picture of what he looked like. Then we have Mohammad Reza the Shah, who's referred to in modern history as the Shah, Shah of Iran from 1941 to 1979. And he was a descendant of the Shah of Iran. Ayatollah Khomeini was the high-ranking Shiite leader who helped oust the Shah that we saw on the last slide. So the Iranian Revolution occurred in 1979, in which this leader, Mohammad Reza the Shah, was overthrown by his own government. And Ayatollah Khomeini was one of the leaders who overthrew the Shah. Mohammad Mossadegh was the prime minister of Iran who was ousted in a U.S. organized coup d'etat, and he's referred to in the novel. The Majuls were a religious group that ran Iran's Islamic Republic, and here's a picture of what they look like. Notice their Western dress combined with also their more conservative dress. So Iran in the 20th century, the discovery of oil. So this is one of the most important understandings of the conflict in Iran. So when oil was discovered in Iran, the 19th century was the time in which at the same time the West was industrializing. So all of this industrialization required oil and energy to run the machines and then factories and everything that was happening here in the United States and in Western Europe. So Iran saw this as a money-making opportunity. And the West was very intrigued. They needed oil for its rapid industrialization. So they found a friend in Reza Shah, and they put him into power in the 19th century in order to control the oil of Iran. So they wanted to have kind of a relationship with the Iranian leader. The result, cheap oil for the West, little profit for Iran. So the impact of Reza Shah. He wanted to modernize Iran. He wanted to follow the Western example and squash all rebellion. So under his leadership, education is expanded, especially for women. The veil is banned. Growth of businesses, as well as a new middle class emerged. This is all under his leadership. But to get everyone on the same page, it was very difficult. He had to take away control from the clergy. He muffled the press, so there was a little bit of restriction around the free operation of press, and he arrested any rebels who did not agree with him. Now, imagine that this created some tension in the culture. The impact of World War II on Iran. So during this time, Iran wanted to side with Germany. So is forced out of power. The new ruler is Mohammad Reza the Shah. So as you can imagine, the West, who was fighting Germany in World War II, did not want Iran to align with Germany. So they helped create a coup and ousted the leader in order to allow the U.S. to become even more involved as it turned into a superpower after its victory in World War II. So we know that the big takeaway here is really just that the West was interested in its oil supply being secure from this nation. By the 1950s, the people of Iran were a bit tired of the U.S. presence, and Mohammad Mossadegh appointed prime minister to calm the people. And so the Shah decided to have one of the Iranians, Mohammad Mossadegh, elected in order or appointed to become prime minister in order to give the people, some kind of local presence in their own government. And the oil industry was nationalized, which meant that in order to help the people feel better about the U.S. presence, Mohammad Mossadegh made the oil industry under the control of the government. So the government and the people of Iran, therefore, would earn all of the money. However, the West was not such a fan of this, as they wanted to have their hands kind of more in control of this oil profit. So he was ousted in a coup d'etat. And around the time of the 1950s. So here we go, Iran in the 20th century. So now we have the stirrings of a rebellion against the Shah, and this is where our novel Persepolis starts off. So educated liberals in the 1970s didn't think reforms went far enough. They wanted a democracy. They wanted to be able to vote for their leaders, and they were tired of the Shah being in such partnership with Western interests. So two groups emerged, the educated liberals who wanted to overthrow the Shah and fundamentalist Muslims who thought the reforms went against Islam and they wanted more religious influence within the government. So the Iranian Revolution occurs. People, the educated liberals combined with the religious leaders, overthrow the Shah in 1979. Ayatollah Khomeini, who's depicted here in this political cartoon, rises to power. The Shah is exiled. Iran becomes an Islamic republic, a theocracy, and there is no more Western influence allowed in the country. So this is a huge transition, and you can imagine that with a more conservative religious government running the people's lives, that they were forced to go kind of more away from the Western liberal dress and sense of life and all of the different ideals of Western democracy towards a more serious, religious, conservative environment. So then we had the Iran-Iraq War, which occurred in which Iraq attacked Iran in order to win access to their oil. So changes in laws after the Iranian Revolution, and these are the pieces that Marjane Satrapi is going to refer to. She's going to refer to the veil, which was forced upon women that they wear the veil at all times. They restricted women's education. They restricted women's dress. And in general, there was a general feeling of a restricted lifestyle that came back under the leadership of the religious leaders. So enter here Persepolis. Our graphic novel was written by the granddaughter of a man imprisoned by the Shah. So she has a very interesting perspective and sort of purpose for why she decided to write her graphic novel. It tells her experiences from the age of 5 to her early 20s. So this is a coming of age story in which our main character, Marjane, is telling her story of growing up in Iran during the time of the revolution and after the revolution. So we get a really neat insight into both Iran as well as her story and how they connect and coalesce. So I'm excited for you guys to read as she engages with the Iranian Revolution. It addresses the themes of home, relationships with God and country, as well as coming of age. So I'm looking forward to working with you guys on Persepolis, and thanks for listening to this background on the Iranian Revolution.